Hey everyone, and welcome to the very first live stream at the Leadership Project. Many of you probably saw that we were doing some testing over the last week, so thank you for your patience with that. And for those people that jumped in and said hello, thank you for that as well. It really helped us with that testing. It's absolutely wonderful to be with you here today and to be able to share with you this first live stream, first of many. And we've got a wonderful topic to bring you today, which is going to be a challenging discussion about millennials. Millennials are a very much misunderstood group of people. And we want to have a very challenging discussion today about what it is. What are those perceptions that people have about millennials? And what of that is real, and how do millennials see themselves? That they've got their own perception and their own identity about who they are. Some things that I'd like to share with you. Just my wife and I noticed this morning, that it's actually the first anniversary today of the Leadership Project podcast. And we started the Leadership Project podcast a year ago with the idea to inspire all leaders to challenge the status quo, to get everyone to stop, reflect, and rethink what it means to be a leader in the modern world, and to bring together different voices and different opinions to have those discussions about what it means to be a leader and to address this leadership crisis that we see in the world, where we find that only 16% of people truly love their job and like their boss. So we've been bringing all of these voices together to have that rich conversation about leadership. And today it's so fitting that we now lead ourselves towards this point where we're now doing a live stream show exactly 1 year after we started to keep that conversation going. The beauty of the live stream is that we can now consider having a interactive conversation with you, where we can hear from you about the questions that you have. So it's not just a recording that you then listen to and then it's gone before too long. Starting to see wonderful comments coming through on the channel. Thank you for this. It's great to see so many people that are joining in today, and your support is really important to us. So thank you so much for joining. My wife there, thank you so much for your support. This absolutely would not be possible without you. As we gear up, we'll give a little bit more time for more and more people to join in. Please do let us know where you're joining in from. So Hanan, we see you joining there from Sydney. That's absolutely wonderful. We see Jen Calabo also joining in, and great congratulations to the Leadership Project for this wonderful milestone, exactly 1 year after we first went live with our podcast. Here we are going out there with our live stream. People are joining in via LinkedIn, and you can also join in via Facebook. We've got Gerald there joining in via Facebook with a big congratulations. And those that don't know, Gerald is our amazing social media manager, and he does an amazing job. People think, I think, that I spend all day on social media, because you see our daily post and we're out there trying to put value-adding content out there all the time. But the secret is that we're a team of 6. It's I could not possibly do what I do without the support of people like Gerald doing the social media, Faris Sadek doing our video and editing content, just amazing. Joanne Guinto, Joanne goes on, also supporting us in sales and marketing. Our wonderful virtual assistant, Rika, and my beautiful and supportive wife, Say. All that you see that we do all the time would not be possible without them. So if you're out there listening, please do continue to tell us where you're joining from. We've got Tom Rowley, famous author Tom Rowley, author of a book about challenging the way we do education in the system. Really thought-provoking book. He's joining us all the way from Panama. We've got Tate Oliver, amazing transformational coach from Coachmasters Academy, joining us. It's absolutely wonderful to see you there, Tate. We've got Rika saying happy anniversary. You're part of us, Rika, and thank you so much for everything. Also, Faris, the first anniversary of the podcast. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Faris. And Desley joining us from New Zealand. Congratulations to Mick and the amazing Leadership Project group. Thank you so much, Desley. Nico joining from the Philippines. Congratulations with lots of love. So we are feeling this love so much. So thank you for letting us know that you're there. Thank you for listening in. And we look forward to bringing you a wonderful discussion today. Now, without further ado, I do want to get into today's topic. So when we get into this, we want to really have a thought-provoking conversation about millennials and about what it means. All of these things that I talk about the way that they're perceived, about the way that they perceive themselves. And we've got a wonderful guest joining us today, Eadren Tan. And Eadren helps young working people to find purpose and meaning in their careers, helps them with that tricky transition, going from graduating from university or college or whatever their educational institution was, and leaving that community that they had, that very social community, and integrating into the workforce for the first time. And for many, that creates this roller coaster of emotions of leaving something behind you where you had a very strong social network and you had that community spirit and something very familiar into this wild world of the workforce, and discovering that things may not have been what you expected and what you were used to when you're going through your education program. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Eadren and our guest for the day and the discussion that we're going to have. So Eadren, please do introduce a little bit more about yourself and tell us about what led you to want to be with us on this live stream today.
Hi everyone, I'm Eadren. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or almost good night for those of you who are not within our Asia Pacific time zone. So yeah, I think as Mick has aptly described, which I love, he always says it much better than I do. I enjoy working and I live for helping youths in transition, and especially in that tricky situation where you're leaving a comfort zone of school or friends that you know into the workplace, a place where it's all new. It feels like a shark tank, and you don't know where to start or where to navigate. And I think for a lot of young people these days, the basic question or the fundamental one they start with is, which shark tank do I go into? What's the job that I want to go into? And who do you talk to? Because there are different pressures. Your friends are going through the same thing. Your parents might have a different expectation. So all I hope to provide is actually a little gateway for them to see things differently and to know that there's someone here to help them. Because all of us could do with a little help from time to time, right, Mick?
Absolutely, Adrian. And I want to acknowledge you straight away and thank you on behalf of all of those people that you do have.
Oh,
The anxiety that can happen at that point, it can be crippling, and it can take a long time for people to break through that. So the work that you're doing there, really helping those people, I want to thank you on behalf of all of them. But I also want to thank you on behalf of the organizations that they join, their families, their communities, because getting through those tricky times has an impact on everyone else around them. Yeah, I think you've all seen it. Sometimes a millennial can really shut down. They can get what we might talk about this today, but they can get what we call purpose anxiety, and really lose their way for a period of time. And other people are also impacted when that happens. So thank you on behalf of the people that you help. Thank you on
I know.
behalf of their companies, their organizations, and their families when you do that.
Well, I think the biggest thank that I want to give is to all the young people who dare to entrust me with helping them go through this transition. I mean, we've all been there. I don't know if you remember, but I definitely do when I first entered the workforce and had to navigate all the different, um, what should I say, all the different rules, all the different, it's a different playing field, right? All the different
Mm.
people, all the different regulations, all the different ways of talking, behaving. I mean, it's a lot. It's very overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's get into it. Let's get into the content for everyone listening in and watching on LinkedIn and Facebook now. What I'd like you to do is, if you have a question as we go along, please do tag it with the letter Q before you ask the question. It'll just help me to be able to see which ones are just a comment or something like that, or versus a question that you would really like us to address in today's show. So letter Q, and then you can go ahead and ask your question would be wonderful. The other advertisement I'd like to make as we start is that we're going to make a lot of generalizations today. We're going to make a lot of provocative statements on purpose to get the conversation going. The opinions that we express today, I don't want you to sit there shocked and offended and, oh, how could Mick possibly say that? I'm doing it on purpose. I'm being provocative on purpose to make sure that we have the conversation that we need to have. So, and the other part with the generalizations, they are that all generalizations are wrong and some are useful. So we're going to talk about stereotypes, for example. That doesn't mean that every single millennial is exactly like the stereotypes that we're going to talk about today. So please keep that in mind as we go. And we're going to get right into it. We're going to dive right into the deep end here now, Eadren, with a pretty challenging one to even begin with. So I'm going to throw some words at you about the way that some people perceive millennials, and I'd like your view about those statements. Are they real? Are they true? And how do millennials actually see themselves? So here we go. Entitled,
Let's go for it.
lazy, irresponsible, disloyal, impatient, narcissistic. These are words I've heard people talk about millennials. What's your response to that?
Well, I think that those are very common adjectives that come up when we discuss about millennials, but I'm going to throw a broader question out there, which is, don't these words describe anyone? Not just millennials, right? And I think it's the labeling term because, and I've gone through, and again, maybe I should let all the listeners know, I'm not exactly a millennial, but I think I'm the tail end of a Gen X that a lot of people have assumed I'm a millennial. So un, um, I've unconsciously been classified into that group. So, which is what made me pay attention to all of you a little bit more. And I think when we say narcissistic, when we say entitled, these were words I used to hear because I knew what I wanted to do. I had an opinion. And these are common adjectives I think we would hear with anyone who seems to have a direction or is clearer than others. Because I have my opinion to view, perhaps the tone and manner might not come across um, as well when I was younger and in my 20s too. It might sound narcissistic to someone. It might sound very opinionated. I might sound entitled if I say, I think I should be doing this simply because I know this. Yes, the phrasing might have come across differently, but I don't think that's innately what millennials want to be seen as. They just want to have their voices heard. They just want to let you know that I know what I want to do, which I really respect them for because I see more and more young people know what they want. They just might not know the job to go into or the university degree they want to study to get there, but innately they do know. It's just how to express that accurately, and that's what I do a lot with them.
Okay. All right. So, Eadren, two powerful things that I'm hearing there. The first one, and we'll come back to this one. Are they any different to any other generation? So, your first response, where I said those things, you said, well, couldn't that be any of us? Those labels
Yeah.
that they get tagged with. The second thing is the confusion where that comes in as to when someone is driven and somewhat knows what they want, how that can be interpreted in a negative sense. So the thing I'd like to ask you now, and once again a generalization, how would millennials label themselves?
Sorry, lost you a little bit earlier there. Could you repeat the question if you don't mind?
Sure, Adrian. So we've addressed how the labels that maybe others put on millennials. How do they see
Yep.
themselves? What labels would they attach to themselves?
I think the millennials that I speak with, I'm also going to take this opportunity to address Juliana Croft question,
Mm,
which is to define how we categorize millennials, as it's a broad category and some include Gen Y and some don't. So I think to help clarify, we're going on this conversation by the 7 generation gaps that are defined universally. Gen Y is equivalent to millennials. So they are anyone that is within the age, I think it's born till up to 1995. Okay, so anyone up till that birth year is defined as a millennial. So Gen Y and millennial, it's a casual term. We say Gen Y, which also means millennial. So I hope that helps, Juliana. If it doesn't, please pose another question and I'm happy to clarify. So it's Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, and currently it's Generation Alpha. So that's the different categories of generation gaps. So make back to your question of how do millennials see themselves? I like to see millennials as, or what I hear from the millennials, which is now how I see them as well, is they're very mature. A lot of them are mature younger than I had expected.
mm,
And because of that maturity, they know what the world needs and they want to be part of it. A lot of them come from the space of doing good.
mm,
And to do good, they know that they need to be doing something with the power to influence and impact the world for good. This is what helps them become driven and to know what they're looking for. Yes, there is the other side of it, which I think earlier you used the label entitled, but I think they also feel they should be duly rewarded for what they do, for the efforts
mm.
they put in. And again, don't we all hope for the same?
Yeah, yeah. And once again, another powerful point there, Eadren, as well. So, to come back to Juliana's point, and thank you, Juliana, for joining. I adore Juliana. I got to introduce the two of you. You two would get along famously, by the way. So, separate discussion. Eadren, I'm going to introduce you to Juliana. You'll adore
Thank
her
you,
as
Rick.
well. One of the things about that is the age gaps that we're talking about here, or the generations that we're talking about. A millennial could be someone that's 18, 19, 20, but it could also be someone that's 27. And most people are at a different stage of their life when they're at 27, right? So there's an element that these generations actually do go over quite an age gap, and things happen in your maturity, things happen in your focus, and what's happening in your outside world. So
Yeah,
uh, the, the next thing that I would say uh, about what you're saying about how they label themselves, I'm hearing words like driven. I'm hearing words like
yeah,
ambitious, tenacious.
yep,
These are all admirable traits, right? So, but it can be misinterpreted as being entitled and wanting to go faster, wanting to be the CEO tomorrow, things like this. And this is where we end up in an interesting situation. We've got another question coming through from Tate right now. So these descriptions used for millennials, who is saying these? Are these global? Are they local? Are they labelled by certain age groups? That's an interesting question. Do you have a view on that, Idra?
I think it's just generally the words that are used or associated when the word millennials brought up. I mean, go up to anyone and say, okay, what's the first 3 words that come to your mind when we talk about a millennial? I think the words that you mentioned earlier, that stereotypes, are the 3 words that come up. And I think it's originated a lot in the workplace or those who have interacted with millennials asking them to express their views on something. Because if I go back earlier, what I think something you mentioned was the fact that they also work hard, they're driven, they're ambitious. If I had to put another vocabulary to it, I'd like to see the millennials being described as people who are ambitious
Hmm.
in a different way that may be what we are used to for those of us who have been in the workplace earlier than they have are used to. Because they come in, they know what they want and they say, versus Gen Xers, when we started work, we were taught to obey, for lack of a better word, right? Just follow the instructions. Then there's a proper time to express. Maybe with millennials, they're just more expressive. They might not know what's the right time and place to do it. Again, I use the word might, but They're definitely people who just want to bring a voice out.
Mm, mm.
So I think, are we really taking offense? So the question here is, are we really taking offense to what's being expressed, or are we taking offense to how and when they express it?
Interesting, and that's an interesting delineation there. It may not be the content; it may be the posturing of that and how it's presented. Very interesting. Further to
Yeah.
Tate's opinion, question um, on this, I have seen it in mostly the Western world, where you do see this in the US, you see it in Australia, you see it in the UK, you see it in New Zealand, you do see it from Gen X, you see it from baby boomers, you see from people that have put in hard yards or hard work, and then they're seeing the next generation come through, and there's a perception. Once again, perceptions are not always very valid, but there's a perception that they want to fast track in some respects. So a generation before them that had to put in the hard yards to get to where they are now feeling like the next generation are looking for a shortcut. And that's not the case, but that's where I think some of that perceptions coming from. With Rika
Yeah.
here in the Philippines, same descriptions I encountered in my workplace for millennials in the Philippines. So that's another reference point there as well. So maybe not just completely the Western world, but certainly my experience very prevalent in the Western world for sure. I want to come to the point
Yeah.
that you made before about are they really different? And I've got a few statements to throw at you, Eadren, and get a reaction. So millennials have grown up in a world where they're told that they can do anything they put their mind into, or the world of positive psychology, which is wonderful,
Yep.
sometimes the world of toxic positivity. And toxic positivity is when someone is told, oh, yeah, you did a wonderful job, even when maybe they came 17th in a cross country race of 17 people, right? So there's that. They grow up um, being told that they can change the world. They grow
Mm.
up in an on demand world of instant gratification where they don't have to schedule a trip to the movies. They can download it on Netflix and watch it straight away if they want. And they've grown up in a world of social media. So the question, are millennials really different because of some of those environmental changes that didn't exist when I was growing up, to label myself now as a Gen Xer?
I think the way, a different perspective to look at this, borrowing your word earlier, is that they have easy access to information. They're able to get answers to questions they have. The question is, the information that they're getting and the answers that they're retrieving, is it giving them the quote unquote right opinion? Is it giving them the right answers? But I think what this has brought up is their skill to be able to analyze quickly, assess situations and answers
Mm,
quickly, versus a lot of us who did not have this information prior. You know, I might take 2 weeks in the past going to the library, talking to a person, speaking to, reading the newspaper. I had to go to different elements just to be able to find answers to one question, and I might not have time to analyze all of them by the time I get them. Whereas right now, there's such an overload of information for them because of the ease of access to it, that what they need to understand, what millennials, and I think a lot of them do, is how do I process and what do I believe? You know, with fake news out there.
mm,
It's exactly what we studied in university. Don't know if anyone here actually went through the same, which is when we were told how to find the right sources
mm.
to source for information. Right now, in the millennial world and the high-tech world, sourcing is really easy. It's called the internet. There's not much you have to quote in terms of authors. It's really just the internet. So I think that, not deviating too much from your statement, I think that's where it is right now for them to be able to, put a lot of things together, and that's what we have to teach them because the
Yeah,
answers are easy to get.
mm. Yeah, that's a really good way to get us started on this topic for sure, Eadren. And yeah, they've got access to more information than we ever did. But with that volume of information, they need to develop skills, as we do too, because we're living in the same world, need to develop the skills to filter that, to get to what's real.
Yes.
And with the advancements in technology, unfortunately, comes the disadvantages of that. And I'll make a short plug here to talk about our YouTube channel and in particular, a video that we did with Corey Patrick White about algorithmic bias. So, what comes with this plethora of
Mm.
digital information is also the algorithms are in there kicking in and showing people things that relate to what the bias is telling or what the algorithm is going to show them. So, and it's usually the more provocative things that become viral. And when it becomes viral, it spreads and it spreads and it spreads. And this is how we end up in a situation where there's lots of information, but what's the veracity of that information? And that's a new skill that we all need to be able to develop, to be able to cut through that. That's really interesting for sure. What about the advent with social media of the ever present comparison to others? How do you think that impacts millennials and their mental state?
From what I hear, and I also put this together in terms of what we go through, is I think it's pressure. I try not to use the word peer pressure because it's not just peer anymore. It's just social pressure.
Mm,
I mean, we've always been compared. It just seems to be our human nature that we compare things. Even when we buy a product, we compare which is cheaper, which is a better performer, and much more so when we're human. So that the comparison and the pressures that they're facing in terms of this is so much higher because they see what other people are doing on the internet. They also hear from their friends, and they also get compared by family, possibly, and also in the workplace when you get performance review. All of this adds to an immense amount of pressure that we might not have faced as much or as overwhelmingly in the past because we didn't have the internet, which compares the other 6 billion people, 7
mm,
billion people in the world to us, to one person. And that can
mm.
be a lot.
Yeah, and
And
it's
and then we
sorry, go
come up
ahead.
with our
Yeah,
own benchmark, right? No,
yeah,
sorry. It's just we come up with our own benchmark. How am I doing against them, which is the world? It's one person fighting a world.
yeah, yeah. Really good point, Adrian. And I think where that leads us to um, is an important message for us all is when someone is putting something up on social media, they're giving you a curated version of their life that they want you to see, right? So if someone
Hmm.
puts up a beautiful Instagram life, they're not showing you everything that's going behind. And not everyone has got their life sorted out as much as
Yep.
Instagram would make us believe. So if someone has got that anxiety, they've got that purpose anxiety that we spoke about before, they're feeling a little lost. And then they watch this Instagram feed of other people that have got their life sorted, but it's not real. It's not real.
Yep.
It's just a front. It's just what they want you to see. So be really careful with that comparison. What about
Yeah.
the
And
yeah,
because
go.
we always show our best. We always show our best. We put our
Mm,
best face forward. So we really don't see anything until you have the conversations.
yeah, yeah, really good. Okay. Um, the other thing that we have with that is the 3 second world. There's the pleasure seeking cycle that they
Yep.
get in. So they get a dopamine hit from social media and then that continues to feed on itself. Yeah, social media has got its virtues. It serves a purpose in the world that we never previously had, but it comes
Mhm.
with some baggage that I think all of us need to be aware of. We've got an interesting question coming through from Tate, and we were going to
Okay.
talk about purpose and meaning and direction and values as we go. So let's do this now. How do you feel the millennials kids, mainly alpha, will operate and think differently when they are in their 20s and 30s regarding this purpose, direction, and values? So we're saying that millennials in general are very driven by purpose and meaning, what about the next generation? What's that going to shape like? Bit of crystal ball gazing here, Adrian. What do you think?
I know, right? I actually think with the alpha kids, which are really the kids right now who are 10 and below, if I'm not wrong. Forgive me, I'm not a math whiz. Um, I think these discussions that we're having today and all the questions that are being brought up are crucial and are the pillars of what's going to reach the alphas as they grow up in their 20s and 30s. Because this is going to be in a decade or two from now, and they're going to come into the social media. They're going to come back and possibly, hopefully, watch this video that we're doing right now, watch this live stream if we had recorded it, and taking reference from there, right? And what I mean by this is they're also going to be then looking up to the previous generations, which for them will be the millennials that they work with, won't be Gen Xers anymore, and take direction and the lead of what they've done. So, what's our education system inculcating right now? Are we from young at home trying to teach our kids purpose, value, and meaning in their lives? I'm going to highlight that to say not ours as parents, but helping them create and identify their own value, purpose, and meaning. Because what we've observed a lot is we tend as parents to then share what ours is and influence that to our kids. What if we shifted this to empowering them, which, and it's getting there. I do see some parents doing this, and in schools as well, to empower children to think about where their values come from. A lot of it is influenced by family and friends. What is their purpose? What would they really like to see in the world? Let them start voicing out at a young age. And we can even start teaching them communication and make, as you know, I'm big on communication. It's
Mm,
how they can communicate that in a way that's more palatable, interesting, and engaging with others that they interact with. So I think with these skills, they won't really operate differently, but maybe more effectively and learn from the challenges of the millennials now.
mm.
I hope that answers or provides a bit of insight for you, Tate.
Yeah, I think that's really good, Adrian, and thank you for the question, Tato. It was a really good question and one for us to
Yeah.
think about with the next generation. I'd like to hope that we continue to learn and we continue to build. And what's coming to my mind is things like Glass's choice theory, that we
Mm,
now much more know about freedom of choice, freedom from oppression, freedom from societal expectations. So I'm hoping that generation by generation that we shift away from this. What does society expect of me? To more an individualistic. How do I see myself in the world, and how can I
mm,
bring value to other human beings by the work that I do, and that continual strive for purpose and meaning. I think some of the changes that have happened in society help fuel that. So I believe that, um, as a general rule, and we're seeing it with the great resignation in the US, and not that that's strictly a US problem, but I think we're seeing a world now where people will not put up with workplaces that don't have purpose and meaning, where they're not
yeah.
respected, where their opinions are not valued, where their voices are not heard, where they don't feel that they matter. I think people will less and less tolerate that. So millennials are not tolerating it now. The tail end of Gen X are not tolerating it. Maybe the alphas coming through, Tate. Maybe it'll get to the point where that conversation we don't even have to have it anymore because we've moved on and it's not noteworthy anymore. Great question, Tate. Really love that.
Yeah. And to add to that, I think what the millennials are doing now is creating that revolution. It's that start. And as you said, the tail end, the Gen Xers of the tail end and the millennials are starting a new revolution in workplaces to say you need to have purpose and it needs to align with mine,
Mm,
right? And that's I think that's where the work you and I do bridge in that sense. It's how do we allow and continue to empower millennials to say this is what you want, express it, show the world, and at the same time have the community, the workplace and society in general start to say yes, I'm willing to listen to your voice, rather than turn it into a label of you're entitled, you're narcissistic. See, so there's two parts that we have to educate. And I think millennials start this revolution such that alphas will only continue to make it better.
Yeah, wonderful insights there, Adrian. And Tate is also signing off there.
It's off to picking up.
He's going to pick off his 2-year-old alpha. So that's wonderful. Stay safe, Tate, and thank you so much for joining today and for
Yeah,
your great questions.
I
Uh,
hope it supports you in bringing up the 2-year-old alpha. I'd
yeah,
love to see how your 2-year-old grows up. Actually, that's always a great observation.
yeah, brilliant. Okay, so that that might be a good segue to ask another question. Another perception of millennials, Adrian, is that they're job hoppers, that they'll
Yep.
change jobs every 18 months sometimes. They won't stay. They're not loyal. They won't stay in a job. Why?
I think the way to say this is not about them not staying in a job. Sometimes it's back to what you were saying about the purpose and where the company's direction is going, right? They are a hardworking bunch. They move along because you need to engage millennials in both a high tech world as well as a high touch world. Are you engaging with them? Do you understand what they want? Because millennials are committed. When you speak to them on what they need, on what they want, and align your purposes with them, they're committed and they're hardworking, like we have said. They leave because they usually assess the environment whether I have a better option. And are we really going to fault someone for leaving for a better option? I think the question, if I reverse that, would be how are we retaining millennials?
What?
What's causing them to leave? Yeah, I don't think they job hop per se. And I think between you and I, we also know enough Gen Xers who have done the same, right? And
Yeah.
it's more of what are they leaving for and why aren't they leaving? I
Mm,
think the common three, and you find this on a lot of reports, whether it's a creative Center of Creative Leadership, CCL, or any other major reporting survey on millennials, is that they usually leave for a few things. They're stagnated. That's actually the number one reason. They pick up so quickly and they're so hardworking that their purposes will keep evolving and the need to satisfy that purpose will evolve too.
mm,
Is the work that they're doing continuing to challenge them? They're also very aware that they need to continuously improve and upgrade themselves. As a workplace, are we allowing that to happen? Are we empowering that? With Gen Xers, this was actually a topic that was brought up, but most companies who didn't do it, the Gen Xers stayed on because we, Gen Xers were brought up with that in our head. Stay on. If you're paid a decent salary, you can do the job, just continue it.
mm.
Millennials want a bit more. They want to evolve. They want to know that they're actually, like I said earlier, contributing good and creating impact. You can't do that if you're stagnated,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And of course, all the other environmental issues which we hear a lot leading to that great resignation, which is what's my leader like? What's the leadership of the company like? What's the culture like?
Yeah. Good.
Are they taking care of me? Are they allowing me to have work-life balance?
Mm,
All these topics, if you think about it, are not new. It's just that millennials have helped us made it more vocal
yeah.
and they decided to do something about it. If you don't do something about it, I'm going to leave.
Yeah. Very good.
Gen Xers didn't quite revolt in that manner. So I think that's why I say this is a revolution that I think is great.
So one of the things Juliana's asked there in the chat then is that in the workplace now we've got more generations than ever before. So there's still baby boomers in the workforce. There's Gen X, there's Gen Y, there's Gen Z. Not quite at Gen Alpha yet, but you know they'll be coming in soon.
You'll get there.
So
Yeah.
we do have more generations. So her question is, how do we understand that those different generations might have slightly different priorities? I'm not going to say requirements. She said requirements in the chat, which I get, but what I'm hearing from you, Eadren, is that these needs always existed, but now we've got a generation coming through that's more vocal about it and more passionate and will stand up for it. And if they're not treated the way that they would like to be treated, that they will walk, whereas maybe previous
Yep.
generations were a little bit more tolerant. So, what's
Yep.
your view on Juliana's question? in an organization that's got multiple generations represented in the workforce? How do we balance that in a way that's equitable?
So here comes the coaching question. How do we know anything about anything? And how do we know anything about anyone?
Mm.
Talk
Ask.
to them, ask, and listen. And I think
Okay.
the one thing I'd add is listen with heart and pay attention to what's being said, because a lot of things are sometimes in between the lines. You know,
Yeah.
if someone just says, "Oh, what can I do?" You know, someone gives you a resignation letter and you ask, "Oh, what can I do to help you stay?" And the person says, "Well, I think I'm just really tired. I'm really tired, and I just need a break." Don't take that at face value. Ask a bit more and find out where this tiredness is coming from.
Mm.
And I think if we do exit interviews right, we learn as well, because that's when you find out everything about why someone's leaving. And again, that's another can of worms we'll open later, how exit interviews are done in companies, right, Mick?
Mm.
Um, but listening and having those, and every single time you're doing a performance review, every time you're just having a conversation with them, listen to what they really say. When they say things, oh, this is not possible, this project, it's really impossible, it's difficult. What's really difficult? What do they want from us as a company, as a leader? And I think if we continue listening and adapting quickly enough, by the time we reach the alphas or by the time we have even more diversity, we will also have that inclusion, which is
Yeah.
to meet all the needs of the different generations.
Yeah, and there's wonderful benefits that are going to come from that inclusion and the diversity of thought that will bring. Yeah, really good point, Adrian.
Exactly.
So I want to summarize that. Ask better questions, listen to the
Yep.
answer, and listen to the answer with an open mind, an open heart, and an open will. Yeah, really good, Adrian. I like this a lot. That that takes me to the topic of leadership. I'm going to read out something from Gallup here, Adrian, and I want your response to this. So Gallup so it was actually Clifton, I should say, was the original author of this table, but he obviously is the CEO of the Gallup Group now. So Clifton, famous as the inventor of the Strength Finder and all this stuff, right? So his view about the transition, that is the conversation that needs to shift. So in the past, where we might have spoken about what is my paycheck, it's now what is my purpose. Where we spoke about job satisfaction, it's now about personal development. Where people
Yep.
might have said, who is my boss? They might say, who is my coach? Whereas my annual review becomes, where is my ongoing conversation about my performance, not waiting until the end of the year to tell me how I went? Instead of talking about my weaknesses and where I need to improve, where are my strengths and where do I need to bring those strengths to full power? And instead of talking about my job, talk about my life, of which my job is part of who I am, not the only
Mm.
part of who I am. What's your reaction to that?
You know, even if, as I'm hearing that, I hear those as what I would say. I relate
Yeah.
to all those statements.
Okay.
And again, I'm tail end of Gen X, not a millennial.
Mm.
Innately, all of us, and not just millennials again, want more at work now than just a job, a place that we go to perform an activity that we get remunerated for,
Mm.
and then come home. I think it's evolved from that to something else. And that's what we need to start paying attention to,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Wonderful,
Yeah.
Adrian. So what they're looking for is they want purpose and meaning. They want personal development. They want to feel that their voice is heard, their opinions valued. They want to feel that they matter and that they have balance in their life.
Yes.
And they
And that
will,
they're also
mm,
contributing something to the greater world, the
yeah,
world at large,
yeah, good.
because they
And
see a lot of that with the
mm,
sustainability topics coming up.
right. So working for companies that have a strong social compass as well. Yeah, very good. And they will go somewhere else if they don't find it.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. When I look at this list, I would tick off every one of those six that Clifton talks about. And it's just that the next generation, hats off to them, they are more vocal and they are more persistent, that that's what they need and that's what they're going to ask for. And if they don't get it, they will shop elsewhere. And this is where maybe that job hopper kind of thing comes in. All right, so we've spoken a little bit about how we might lead millennials and ask better questions about change the conversation to the purpose, the development, the coaching, the ongoing conversations. What about millennials now, Eadren, that are coming through as leaders themselves? Any advice for them? Older millennials are now in leadership positions themselves. Any advice for a millennial leading a millennial?
I actually like that. A lot of people thought it was easy that you're a millennial leading a millennial. And I've spoken to a couple who now say that as a millennial leading a millennial, even within the same generation, there are a lot of different perceptions and a lot of different needs and a lot of different wants. A lot of the time, though, the younger millennial who's not in that leadership position yet looks to the elder millennial, senior, not elder, pardon my English, the senior millennial, as someone who could be their mentor. So that's another word that's coming in.
Mm,
How are we allowing um, senior leadership to mentor junior leadership, especially when they're within the same generation? A lot of workplaces I've spoken to are actually afraid that this builds up even more wants, needs. I'm going to have to do more to please them because I'm putting the millennials all into one group where they might just riot against us. But I don't think that's the case. I think what they do is they see the senior millennial in awe. How did you get here?
ah,
What do you have to help me with? What do you think I can do to be where you are at? That's all mentoring questions,
yeah,
right? And that's what, as a millennial who is now in a leadership position, I think that's the greatest thing they can contribute is having these conversations with other millennials in their workplace to support them with this growth. And
yeah,
again, it doesn't have to be in the workplace. It doesn't have to be the company rules or the HR policy to say that we're doing personal development. You can do personal development in this way as well, which is through encouraging that same
mm,
generation leader or even cross-generational to support through a simple mentoring process or a simple conversation.
yeah,
Frequent conversations, I think, like you said, is what they're looking for. Not annual performance reviews, not
mm,
even half yearly, but it's constant check-ins. That's why I said earlier, millennials are high tech and they're high touch.
yeah. I like that. High tech, high touch. And I like what you're saying about show them the way, particularly if there's any there that you identify as maybe having some of that purpose anxiety, maybe are feeling lost. That's where a older millennial can really help the next generation or the next wave that are coming through. That's wonderful, Adrian. I'd I'd like to bring us to a close now. We've been going for 50 minutes. If there are any more questions in the either Facebook or LinkedIn, please do post them now, and we can still got a little bit of time to address them. Whilst they come through, Adrian, can I ask you two things? The first one, what's your final single piece of advice that you would give any leaders out there that are leading millennials and scratching their head and are not sure where to go with this?
I think the first piece of information, and again, it's not just limited to millennials, once in a while, take off your leadership hat and just have a conversation,
Yeah,
a heart to heart, authentic conversation with the people you work with, regardless of which generation they're in. It's just do that. Take off that leadership hat, take off that manager hat, sit down and just say, Mick, let's grab coffee.
yeah,
That's all it takes. That's all it starts off with. And trust me, if you do this often enough, you'll be discovering a lot of different things. Oh, thank you, Jennifer, for already agreeing with that. You just gave me goosebumps. And
I,
and I think more consciously when it comes to millennials is they're very sensitive. They know when you're doing this because it's an action in your KPI or whether you truly want to have this conversation with them.
Yeah.
So do it with heart.
Jen's another transformative coach. She's amazing at what she does as well. So I'm not surprised to hear her agree with that. It's all about having those conversations and listening.
Gosh,
Next,
I feel so lucky already that we've got such great people in the audience today
yeah.
that are actually listening to me. Yeah, I mean, thank you. I mean, you all sound like you're great at what you're doing, and I'm really, really, really lucky to be connected with you through this session today.
Oh, the questions have been outstanding. I'm so happy with the questions that we've been getting. Next one, I would ask you, Eadren, is you do specifically help people with those transitions. Right? So you
Yes.
help young working people with that tricky transition into the workspace in the first place. What's your number one piece of advice that you can give to them?
Sit, breathe, and see what comes to you as the calling. And sometimes it's just thinking about what you enjoy doing, because we forget that a lot. You know, the immediate thing that comes to mind when you look for a job after you graduate is, what am I going to do? What's going to pay me what I think I deserve? But the bigger question is still, what job am I going to take up?
Mm,
And the only way you're going to be able to find the right job is sit down, breathe, and be in a quiet space where you can really be yourself and see what comes up. I mean, I've done this practice with, at least in the last month, with 2 or 3 individuals already. I don't know if you guys are on the call today. If you are, thank you for doing that with me. And all 3 have come up with a realization, because sometimes you we think too much into things. We listen too much to the environment. We forget to listen to ourselves.
yeah. All right, powerful message there. And finally, Adrian. Oh, by the way, you've got Joanne is
Yeah, I've
taking
got
you
a
up
date
on that.
already, it looks like.
You've got a coffee date. So she's absolutely loved the conversation this morning and what you're bringing to the table, and she would love
Thank
to
you, Joanne.
give you that opportunity to listen to her deeply and what
Let's do it.
where she's at. So that's wonderful. So on that note, that's a perfect note to ask you this question, Adrian. There's going to be people in the audience that want to know more about how you do what you do and how you can help them. How do people get in contact with you?
Yeah, so my website is www.yourinnertorch.com. So the name came up because I just want to light up everyone's own innate flame, that spark, and that light that will shine to what you do. Or go through Mick. It seems like a couple of you know him. Those of you who already know me, come on and make a date with me. It's the same on IG and FB, Facebook and Instagram. Look for me at the handle at Your Inner Torch. I will put that in the chat if that's helpful as well.
Yeah, perfect, Adrian. And if someone can do that, I'm not logged in, funnily enough. I'm not logged into Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm just absorbed and being in the moment here with Adrian. So if someone
Same.
can type that into either
It's okay.
Facebook or
I've just
LinkedIn
put,
right now, I've got a
I'm
little
doing
button
it.
where I can share it on the screen so everyone gets the details of Your Inner Torch. Love the name. Speaks volumes about what it is that you help people with, Adrian.
Thank
And
you.
once again, thank you. Thank you on behalf of
Thank you.
everyone that you help. Thank you on behalf of the Leadership Project today for all of the wonderful things that you've been sharing with us. It's just been wonderful to have you on the show. You can always say that you were here at our very, very, very first live stream. And that's something that no
Thank
one
you.
can ever take away from you. It's been absolutely wonderful having you on the show. We've had a couple of other comments come in. I want to close out with those. So
Yes.
Catherine really supporting some of the things that we're saying, that the recent graduates that she's been getting, not really after the salary, but after the experience and after the
The
mentorship
mentorship.
that they'll get from the company. So where is their development going to come from? And what is the experience that they're actually going to perceive? So thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that, Catherine. and
Yeah, thank
getting
you.
more love here from Jen as well. So obviously, people have loved the show. If you have loved the show, please do get out there and support us. You can share if you would like the session for anyone that missed out on today's session. Here we go. Joanne has typed up that connection
Yes,
to
she has.
Eadren. Please do have a look at that. So your inner torch. If you think that other people would have gotten great benefit from this, you can, after the show, after it goes live, there's a recording that goes up. You can share it with others to make sure that they get the benefit from it as well. Please do like us on Facebook so that you get more notifications of when we're doing activities like this. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on our LinkedIn page, and you'll always get notified as to things that are coming up. I'd also like to share with you a few things about the Leadership Project, if I may. So I have my new book coming out next month, You're a Leader, Now What?, which is all about that transition that someone makes into their very first leadership role. There's something in it for all of us to learn about leadership and tricky transitions as you go through your career. But the title is You're a Leader, Now What? And it'll be out next month. If you follow us, you'll get the first opportunity to get a copy of that book. You can download our self-reflection journal at mixbeers.com. That is a practice I've been doing for 14 years now, every day, self-reflecting on where I'm at as a leader and using it as my ability to be able to continue to develop as a leader every single day. We have our next cohort of our flagship course starting in early April. So if you would like to be part of our gateway to high performance leadership, which is taking leadership development and flipping it on its head and giving you the ability to learn in a collaborative environment using collaborative or social learning from your cohort, a cohort of students that come from all over the world to share their experiences about leadership. It embraces micro learning and the ability to be able to learn something and immediately put it into practice. So we use learning labs and we use practical labs. So we break this mold of where someone might go on a leadership course for a period of time and then think all of a sudden, okay, you're a leader now, off you go. We break that down into things that are far more effective than that. So once again, I'd like to thank on behalf of our audience today, Eadren. I'd like to thank you for joining us today. It's been absolutely wonderful. I know that the audience would have gotten great benefit from today. I know that I did. So please, thank you so much from the bottom of our heart for joining us today, and we'll draw it to a close there. Any last things to say, Eadren?
I think for me, it's thank you, Mick, for having me on your inauguratory session, live streaming. I hope we get to do this a bit more. And I'd like to thank the audience for being so engaging, for all your questions. Catherine, your last comment about mentoring within the company, yes, that is coming up fast and strong with a lot of companies that I speak with on how to set up mentoring programs, especially for millennials. And I'd love to talk to you. And anyone who's reached out for coffee, Therese, oh, thank you, Mrs. Spears. I'd love to have coffee with you as well. And Juliana, Gerald, Faris, I'm so glad you guys had something to take away from it. Please try to stay in touch. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can just look up my name, Eadren. You'll find me there. And yes, let's do virtual or real life coffee, depending on where we're at.
All right.
Thank you all for being such a great audience. And thank you again, Mick. This was a great experience.
All right. Thank you so much. And stay safe, everyone. And we look forward to bringing you more great content in our next live stream next week. So thank you all. Have a great day.